Have you ever wondered how humans reach space? Picture this: an infinite expanse of stars and galaxies, stretching out farther than our minds can comprehend. This is space, a vast, endless frontier that has captivated the human imagination for centuries. Just like you might be curious about what's hiding in the darkest corners of your attic or the deepest parts of the ocean, humans have always been intrigued by the mystery of what lies beyond our blue skies. The twinkling stars, the glowing moon, the blazing sun, and the planets, they all spark a sense of wonder and curiosity in us. This curiosity is what led us to dream, to invent, and to explore. It's what pushed us to look up at the night sky and say, "We want to go there." And so, we did. So how did humans manage to reach this fascinating place called space? Let's find out. The journey to space started on Earth, with a dream and a rocket. Imagine this. A long, long time ago, people could only gaze up at the stars and wish they could touch them. But then, some very clever people came up with an idea that seemed as wild as a monkey riding a bicycle. They thought, what if we could fly up to the stars? This wild idea gave birth to the concept of space travel, and it all began with the invention of the first rockets. Now, these were not your average fireworks rockets. These were gigantic machines, as tall as a 20-story building. Picture that. These rockets had to be incredibly powerful, because, you see, it's a long way up to space. So, they were packed with enough fuel to make a car go around the Earth more than 40 times. Creating these rockets was no easy task. It was like trying to bake the world's tallest cake, but much, much harder. There were a lot of trials and errors, a lot of bangs and booms, and a lot of learning. But the dream of reaching for the stars was stronger than the fear of failure. Finally, the day came when the first rocket was ready to launch. It roared and rattled, and with a tremendous whoosh, it shot up into the sky, leaving a trail of smoke behind. People held their breath as they watched the rocket disappear into the sky, marking the beginning of humankind's journey to space. And where did these powerful rockets take us first? To the moon. Imagine being the first person to walk on the moon. What would you see? What would you feel? Picture yourself as Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin, the first humans to ever set foot on the moon in 1969. They journeyed through space in a spacecraft called Apollo 11, a journey that took them 4 days, 6 hours, and 45 minutes. Now, have you ever jumped and felt yourself being pulled back down? That's gravity. But on the moon, gravity is much weaker. So if you were to jump on the moon, you'd bounce around like a kangaroo floating in slow motion. Ain't that fun? These astronauts planted a flag, collected moon rocks, and left footprints that are still there today. Why? Because there's no wind on the moon to blow them away. From the moon, humans looked to the stars and thought, where next? So, what does it take to become one of the brave explorers of space? You might think it's all about rocketing off into the cosmos, but before any astronaut can take that giant leap for mankind, there's a whole lot of training and learning to be done right here on Earth. First off, astronauts need to be in tip-top physical shape. Imagine running a marathon but in a suit that weighs as much as a small refrigerator. That's what it's like to go on a spacewalk. Astronauts spend hours each day exercising and training their bodies to withstand the rigors of space travel. But it's not all about brawn. Brains are just as important. Astronauts need a strong understanding of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Many astronauts are also pilots, doctors, engineers, or scientists. They must be able to operate complex machinery, conduct scientific experiments, and even fix broken equipment in space. All this, while floating around without gravity to help them out. And let's not forget about the mental toughness required. Space can be a lonely, scary place. Astronauts need to stay cool under pressure, work well in a team, and be prepared for anything that comes their way. They undergo rigorous psychological training to ensure they're up to the challenge. Here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that NASA's astronaut training includes survival skills? That's right. Astronauts have to learn how to survive in the wilderness, just in case their spacecraft lands off course when returning to Earth. They learn how to find food and water, build a shelter, and even how to signal for help. Becoming an astronaut requires dedication, hard work, and a whole lot of courage. But those who make it through the rigorous training are rewarded with an experience that is truly out of this world. It's not easy, but imagine floating in space and looking down at Earth. That's a view worth working for. But how do astronauts live and work in space? Well, let's talk about the incredible machines that make this possible. Space shuttles and satellites. You see, space shuttles are like taxis that ferry astronauts from Earth to space and back. They're reusable spacecraft built to withstand the intense heat of re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. It's like a home away from home for astronauts, equipped with living quarters, a kitchen, and even a gym. Yes, you heard that right. Astronauts need to exercise even in space. Without gravity, their muscles and bones could weaken, so they spend about 2 hours each day working out. They use specially designed equipment that works without gravity, keeping them fit and healthy. And what about food? How do astronauts eat in space? Well, they can't exactly order pizza delivery, can they? They eat specially prepared meals that are vacuum sealed to prevent spoilage. When it's time to eat, they add water to rehydrate their food, and voila, dinner is served. Now let's talk about satellites. These are like the eyes and ears of scientists on Earth. They orbit our planet, sending back valuable information about the weather, climate, and other environmental factors. Some even help us navigate or communicate around the world. Without satellites, we wouldn't have GPS or be able to watch live international TV broadcasts. But it's not all work and no play for astronauts. In their downtime, they can look out of the windows of their space shuttle and see the Earth from space, a sight that very few humans have ever seen. They can watch the sunrise and sunset multiple times a day, see the northern and southern lights, and gaze at the vastness of the universe. Living in space is a fascinating experience, full of challenges and rewards. It requires a lot of preparation, training, and courage. But, for the astronauts who get to experience it, it's an adventure like no other. Living in space is like nothing else on Earth. It's a unique experience that only a few people have had the chance to enjoy. Now it's time to test what you've learned today with a quick quiz. Let's dive right in. Question 1. When did humans first step into space? Was it in the 1950s, 60s, or 70s? If you said the 1960s, you're absolutely right. The first human journeyed into space in 1961. Next up, question 2. What's the name of the vehicle that astronauts use to travel to space? Is it a spaceship, a space shuttle, or a flying saucer? If you chose space shuttle, kudos to you. Now on to question 3. Do you remember the first man who set foot on the moon? Was it Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, or Michael Collins? If you guessed Neil Armstrong, good job! He was indeed the first man to walk on the moon. Moving on to question 4. Can you tell us what a satellite does? Does it take pictures of space, help with communication, or both? If you said both, you're on a roll. Satellites are indeed used for both communication and capturing images of space. And finally, our last question. What do you need to become an astronaut? Is it a love for space, a lot of studying, or both? If you said both, you've nailed it. Being an astronaut requires both a love for space and a lot of studying. Well done on completing the quiz. Whether you got all the answers right or learned something new, give yourself a pat on the back for your effort. To sum up, we've taken a journey through the wonders of space. From our first steps into the unknown, landing on the moon, becoming an astronaut, to understanding space shuttles and satellites. Remember, space is a vast and exciting place. We've only just started to explore it, and who knows what we'll discover next. Keep dreaming, keep learning, and maybe one day, you'll be the one telling us about the wonders of space.